The intriguing idea that Moltemoth's draconic body was literally fused with the jungle was one of the early conceptual ideas for it. Smaller vines and roots would converge to arteries visible throughout the jungle's floor. Hints of its spine could have actually protruded from the ground, and subtle movements linked to its breathing and heartbeat would have been present in parts of the jungle. While some aspects are somewhat present in the final rendition, the whole premise is far from what we finally got. Moreover, the creature we fight at the end of Dragon's Den is a red herring. The mouth of Moltemoth is nothing but a subjugated creature serving its master, and that master is Moltemoth. The death or survival of the massive draconic creature is inconsequential to Moltemoth's existence. Moltemoth is the vines and roots. What we got in the end is that Moltemoth's physical body is, or rather was, plant-based. Possible physical extensions that I can think of include the many tendrils, vines and roots, the vine crawlers, and possibly the vine rats. To summarize, either Moltemoth's supposed draconic body, which again is not to be confused with that of the mouth, is now so deeply intertwined with the jungle that it's basically rendered undistinguishable from it. Or its actual body of origin is that of a plant, more specifically a tree. Moltemoth would be similar in nature to the trees from which Sylvari spawn. And I said trees plural because I'm considering Malik's tree into all of this. But one thing at a time. As a starting point, Moltemoth being an elder tree would easily explain its ability to connect with the Sylvari through the Dream of Dreams, an ability it would share in a way with the Pale Tree. Following Moltemoth's demise, this ability was never passed to other powerful beings, because it was an innate property of Moltemoth's nature. Subsequently, in the final confrontation with Moltemoth, the elder being embodies itself in an avatar form, much like the Pale Tree does. However, differently from the Pale Tree's avatar, which resembles a human, Moltemoth's resembles a saurian, a dragon if you will, because those were the creatures roaming Tyria eons ago, when the elder tree was still growing, and that's what it identified with. These trees are perhaps a natural occurrence, and Moltemoth became so powerful over time, slowly accumulating magic and enhancing its mind, that it decided to destroy or subjugate potential contenders, be it other trees or even dragons. Hence why we are presented with the mouth, a major minion longly mistaken for being Moltemoth itself. Hence the association of the ancient races to the elder dragons. In fact, the mouth could have even been spawned via the elder tree eons ago, while Moltemoth was still able of doing so, in the same way Sylvari now spawn via the Pale Tree. The origin of these trees, and consequently of their seed pods, is still shrouded in mystery though. In short, the history tells us that the seed that would sprout and grow into the Pale Tree was taken by the human Ronan in a yet unlocated cave that was guarded by terrible plant creatures. This seed, planted and nurtured by Ronan and the centaur Bentari, would become one of a kind in modern Tyria. That's what we know. Considering the story so far though, I would say that if a seed was instead planted, tended and twisted by Moltemoth's influence, it would grow to become a blighting tree. But there is one more option, which would be to let the seed grow on its own, to let nature take its course. In modern times, this would lead to the creation of Malik, a Sylvari born from another tree. Malik's tree would still be linked to the Dream of Dreams by nature, but it would possess a very rudimental unconscious mind, hence why Malik had no apparent connection to its tree. Since the Dream of Dreams and everything concerning it can be confusing to comprehend, let me show you the concepts I used for all of this. We have Tyria on one side and the Dream of Dreams on the other. This one would be similar to a realm of the mists. We are then presented with the Pale Tree, the Dream and the Nightmare. The tree simultaneously exists on both planes, and it slowly grew a conscious elevated mind, while the Dream and the Nightmare would be unconscious entities existing within the Dream of Dreams, which probably arose alongside the Pale Tree and were shaped by the tree's experiences. They would later act as wells for unborn Sylvari spines to draw from. The Pale Tree, however, heavily influenced by Ventari's teachings, would end up strongly favoring the dream over the nightmare. We then have the Sylvari, spawning on Tyria via the Pale Tree. Each individual dream of the Sylvari would be what shapes their mind, their identity, and their body prior to their birth. Once the transition to the physical world of Tyria is complete, their future experiences, much like those of the Pale Tree, would indirectly contribute to both the dream and the nightmare. So while most of the Sylvari would always be linked to the Pale Tree, they would still be independently connected to the Dream of Dreams. Then there's Malik's tree, still connected to the Dream of Dreams, but unable to guide itself and its spawn in any way, as it lacks a conscious mind of its own, in other words, no avatar. So Malik himself would possess a very basic identity, drawing from aspects omnipresent in the mists, hypothetically similar to what we saw happen with Rasaying It Was One. Finally, there's Moldramoth, or the Elder Tree, which like the other trees would have a natural and innate connection to the Dream of Dreams, but would now lack the ability to spawn beings on its own, as the corruption would have negated this a long time ago. So its twisted birthing pods and other blighting trees must resort to cloning now. But this wouldn't be its only way of corruption. In this view then, Moldramoth's ability to directly influence the Sylvari becomes apparent, since the potential link through the Dream of Dreams was always there. By the way, there is an honorable mention to make. Scarlet's Nightmare Tower, which succeeded in spawning a unique kind of plant being before being destroyed. I'm unsure about the tower's nature, as it was aided by Scarlet's Magitech, but I'm tempted to assume that it also had a connection to the Dream of Dreams. The next thing to consider would be the knowledge revealed by Wind's dream that Sylvari come from the Jungle Dragon, that they belong to it, and that they are meant to serve it. We are brought to believe that Sylvari came from Moldramoth itself somehow, but we know that's not true. They exist because of the trees, and their minds are generated independently. So if anything, it would be the seeds that may come from Moldramoth. If we equate the Pale Tree as being the mother of the Sylvari, then Moldramoth would be a very distant relative or ancestor. The seed pods could be obtained by Moldramoth by exploiting yet uncorrupted newborn trees around the start of every cycle, given that the trees and the seeds might still be a natural occurrence unknowingly to us. In conclusion, Moldramoth, even if more powerful, is unequal to the Pale Tree, both in its natural origin and as a superior being among its kind. The Elder Being didn't come in contact with someone so evolved of its kind for a very long time, if not ever. Hence why the Pale Tree was viewed as a potential danger to its existence and needed to be eradicated, specularly to how Krarkatoric killed Glint and tried to destroy Orin. After all, the Sylvari, and specifically the original firstborn Traherne, were a key component to Moldramoth's ultimate demise. I hope this video was enjoyable. Thanks for watching.